Okay, so I just want to talk through some kind of practical applications, things we can do no matter kind of what role you're in. Doesn't have to be a clinical role, really any space in an organization, things that we can do to put into place to just help make it a little easier for kids and families who've experienced trauma. What should we know as helping professionals that we can practically apply when engaging or working in whatever way with kids and families who have been exposed to trauma? So this first idea is this idea of predictability. When we think about trauma, it often takes away that sense of predictability. So by predictability, I mean things like having a consistent routine and expectations. These can be particularly helpful for kids who have gone through trauma when there's a lot of a lack of predictability and safety that have been put into their lives. So what are some ways that we can increase, even in a small way, this sense of predictability? I'll share a couple of examples. I'm really interested if there's ways in your role that you've increased a sense of predictability for kids and families. I'd love to hear about that. That would be great. So things like describing your role and how the day will unfold. I know that sounds so silly, but oftentimes kids and families that have been exposed to trauma are seeing a lot of different people. And they don't know all the nuances of our jobs or who we are. And so being really clear from the very onset, here's what I do, here's what my job is, here's how our time together is going to unfold. That predictability is a way that we can increase that sense of safety. We could provide reminders or countdowns for upcoming activities. So transitions are really hard for kids who have experienced trauma. Again, it's that unpredictability. So providing countdown or reminders, hey, I'm really enjoying this conversation. We've got 10 more minutes left. I'll let you know 5 more minutes before we're done, before you need to leave on to your next thing. Any way that you can provide some sort of predictability about what's happening next can be incredibly helpful. Having a consistent tone or having that consistent warmth, again, can be challenging, but that's another way that we can be kind of predictable. Okay, this is probably my favorite one. I also think these are great for everyone, not just for kids who have experienced trauma, but choice. So one of the most significant impacts of child trauma on kids and adolescents is a loss of the sense of control, right? When I wasn't in control, look what happened. I got hurt. And so I want control. I mean, we all want control. But after trauma specifically, children and adolescents in a world where they already don't have so much control are really going to be grasping for that control. The more that we can give that to them, the more we can reduce some of those unhelpful behaviors of grasping for that control. Choice is one way that we can do that. Again, even in small forms, how can we provide choice to the kids that we're working with? I just wanted to touch a little bit on this concept of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that we have in our own abilities. It's the belief that we have in our own competency. And after a trauma, one thing that can be taken away from kids is their self-esteem and their self-efficacy, because they couldn't stop that abuse from happening, right? They really wanted to, but they couldn't stop that. And so that sense of self-efficacy might be lowered. And so if it's appropriate, if it's in our roles, how can we maybe set small, achievable goals so that kids can start to feel that success again? Putting kids in situations where they can be successful, when they can feel competent, especially after a trauma, is so, so important. Oftentimes what happens is some kids might be acting out, getting in trouble, and so they lose privileges like sports or other things that might really increase that sense of competence and efficacy. We just want to be mindful that we're not taking everything away. talking to families about, what are some ways that um, your kiddo can feel successful? What are they good at? Really, it could be really small things too, things that they're already doing a good job in, so that we can really increase that sense of efficacy. Okay, so just a couple of more practical applications here. Um, Hope, not surprising. I think throughout this presentation, we've really talked about normalizing and validating a child's experience. So, normalizing is really about you're not alone, understanding that the way that you're responding to a difficult and scary event makes a lot of sense. And validating is simply the act of letting someone else know that their experience is real, right? What you're going through is real. I understand. And it makes sense why that's happening. And that really does create this sense of hope. So, education might seem like a small thing to do, educating kids, educating families on what trauma is. Can feel maybe kind of like only a tiny piece of the pie, but I do think it's such an important piece to provide that sense of hope. And then we've talked a lot about safety, all the different ways that predictability, choice, normalizing, validating can provide that sense of safety. There's also other safety that we should mention, like if it's possible, having that physical sense of calming to help increase that sense of safety. I work in a hospital, so unfortunately, I can't get rid of these overhead lights that I hate. So there's things out of our control as adults. But what can we do to create a safe, soothing physical environment as much as possible? Again, we can't take away all the triggers, that's impossible, but can we create a calming environment that helps promote safety for kids after a trauma when possible, whether that's in our offices, in our hallways, in our front desk, in our spaces, just helpful to keep in mind. I'll share a quick story. When I worked at a clinic, there was a security guard at the front. And I had kiddos that were super, super scared to come in because of it. So, talk about predictability. What we did was send a letter out to kids. This is what you'll see when you come to our offices. There'll be a security guard out front. He's there to keep folks safe. You'll meet someone at the front desk. So it's really increasing that sense of predictability and that sense of safety. Other things that can help increase that sense of safety is maybe having a safe space dedicated for kids and families. So if you need a break, if it gets overwhelming, I really encourage you. It's okay to step out and take 5 minutes. If they're, caregiver, or hey, there's this like nice little corner over there with a rug and a chair. If we need a break, let's like find a safe space for us to be able to just kind of take that pause that we need, especially if that fight, flight, freeze is happening. And then if it's appropriate in your role, obviously creating those safety plans with kids and families too.